Welcome to Between Three Witches, where we talk about witchcraft in plain sight, everyday magic lived honestly. And it's hosted by three witches, me, Gail the Witch Next Door.
Me, Vicky, the Wheelie Green Witch.
And me, Anon, the Anonymous Witch.
We all walk different paths with different levels of experience, but share a deep respect for the craft as it is actually practiced, not the dramatised version that people expect. Today's episode dives into a topic that always gets people talking, the basics of witchcraft and the terminology. Because yes, we get loads and loads of questions about this from everybody. So we're going to break it down really simply for you all today. But before we get into that, how have we all been since the last episode?
Exhausted and looking forward to a holiday.
All booked up and getting ready to go.
Up, and I'm going to
In a couple of days, right?
Yeah, we did just a quick late city thing, and we are just going to go and scooch off, not do the real world for a week and go and have fun. That's what we're going to go and do.
Oh, it sounds amazing.
And similar to Vic, I've booked a nice little week away with me and my boys. Hopefully the weather will be as delicious as what it is now. So yeah, I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it.
I know. I think where the weather shifts, we all just get into that shift mindset, right?
Yeah.
And that's definitely part of the craft, especially when you've been practicing for a little while and you lean into that seasonal shift. It just changes everything. But like I said last time, I was birthing my drum, which I got to do since the last episode. And if you've never heard of this before, because I've had to explain it to a lot of people going, oh, what do you mean you birthed a drum? So to break it down simply, actually, because this is what this podcast is about today, birthing a drum is you're building your own drum. You get to pick the hide that you're going to work with, and I picked a deer. I've already got a goat hide. You can choose to have the drum circle. That's not what it's called. What's the circular bit inside? Well, anyway, you can have the wooden part of the drum sent to you beforehand so you can connect with it, which is birch, and birch is all about new beginnings, which I love. And then when you birth the drum, it's a whole ritual around bringing the spirit of that animal back into the drum that you're making. You're with an amazing group of people who are all doing the same thing, and they've got different hides, and you get to connect and sit in ritual. But it's also an Avebury as well, which I just adore the energy there. So I had an absolutely amazing day. And then the week after, which was the last weekend, I got to go and then play my drum and become quite a tourist attraction, to be honest, because all of the tourists there, the weather, like you say, Anon, has been incredible, and everybody's going around recording us. So I'm like,
Oh, wow.
I was drumming on that drum,
Awesome.
leaning on the stones. But what I wanted to go, just tag me, Gail the Witch Next Door. But I didn't. I was leaning into my drum with my drum centers, leaning into the energy of Avebury. So I get to go and do my drum circle every month. But what an incredible experience. And I know I'm really fortunate to be able to do that, birthing my own drum. But yeah, highly recommended by me.
But I would say it is similar to breathing life into your puppets, into your objects, into your effigies, that idea of birthing something and really connecting with all the materials that you're using and essentially bringing it to life, so to speak. So similar, but I haven't been drumming on any drum in Avebury, but it sounds like something I should do.
Oh, it's just incredible. I mean, just, yeah, the energy of Avebury as well. I love it. I absolutely, and I forget, I literally live 20 minutes away. It's diabolical that I don't go more often. So, well, I do now, but yeah, it's been a more recent thing. Okay, so shall we get into today's topic, the basics of witchcraft and the terminology? And listeners, you are coming in raw today because we have all got an alcoholic beverage in hand. It's a Friday night. This is probably going to go over two podcasts. One, because we may not get our words out, but two, this is such a deep topic. We really want to do it justice and go through as much as possible. So bear with us. I'll try and edit out the really ridiculous bits, or they will stay in for the humorous factor as we go through our drunken journey.
I already have the giggles, so
you already have the giggles. I know.
Yes. Oh, Yakida.
Akida. Okay, so shall we start with what witchcraft actually is? And it's a really difficult thing to sometimes explain to people, especially when I've seen on social media just this week, and I've seen it before, but it popped up again. And it was a show in the UK called This Morning where it had a witch come onto the show in a pointy hat, talking about what a witch is. And I don't know who this lady is, but I don't feel like she did it justice at all. But on the flip side, it does get a bad rap. So I guess, Anon, how would you describe what witchcraft actually is? And we're not talking about book terminology. This is just about real live, what it means to you.
Oh, wow. It means everything to me. Quite honestly. Like I've said to you both before, I genuinely can't pinpoint a time in my life where I look back and think, oh, that's when I decided to be a witch. That's when I decided to practice magic. It's kind of always been there. And I think a lot of that is because of how I've been brought up, in a very open family. You be you, you be happy, etc. Witchcraft for me is about empowerment. It's about taking a stance as a female. It's about embracing my own femininity, my own divine, my own source, recognizing the power within. And for me, anyway, in my practice, when I work with deities, I don't view it as I'm bowing to them, nor do I expect them to bow to me. We meet as equals, and we converse as equals, and we work in unison. It's such a beautiful practice, and as I said, it is genuinely part of my day-to-day practice that I don't know who I would be without it.
I have to agree with this. I've been doing this a really long time. I don't remember really not doing it. I'm an artist, but that isn't just a work thing. And so it's like witchcraft to me is the same as being an artist. I live it I live that creativity all the time. Whether it be through arty stuff or through, if you like, witchcraft type things to do. It is just me. And that sounds like a terrible answer, but it's that constant learning, the constant view for knowledge, the constant creation. How can I work with plants? How can I grow things better? How can I work better with nature? Stripping myself right back and being really honest with myself as well. Really honest. I've done something that doesn't work. Why is that? Was that something to do with me? And that honest relationship with myself, with continued learning, I think that's how I'd sum it up.
Yeah, and do you know what? I love the way that you two have described that, because the honest roots of witchcraft, and when we talk about folk tradition and practitioners, they didn't call themselves witches, did they? It wasn't
No.
about naming the name. It was about, like you say, working with plants. It was about who they are, being honest with their emotions. I know you've said in a previous podcast as well about passing down things orally as well, Vicky. So
Yeah.
true, honest witchcraft didn't have a name. It was about being at one with nature. That's how I feel. I lean into a folk practitioner, but the word witch for me is reclaimed as a power position, because I want people to know and understand that I reclaim every part of my soul that has been told not to be who I'm supposed to be as a female, um, as a practitioner. When we go back to historically why witches in inverted commas were persecuted. I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but ultimately witchcraft is from a folk tradition, which is what I practice, although I don't call it that. Something where I'm working with herbs and the land and the moon and the
Yeah.
energy and
Yeah.
myself, like Vicky articulated really well. Like, it's being honest with myself. It's feeling the energy of others and how that resonates for me. So witchcraft can be practiced without having the need to call ourselves a witch, because traditionally it wasn't what we did. But again, the reclamation of that word is also okay.
I took on, if you like, the label witch, and we'll get to why I call myself Green Witch a bit later on. But I took on the label witch because others called me it first before I even took that name on. And I only took that on because I understood the history of it and the power of it, and I'm going to reclaim it.
But the other thing about witchcraft, and I've been asked this a lot as well, is like, do you have to come from a lineage witchcraft
Oh,
line? I know. I mean, obvious answer to this is because I haven't been practicing my whole life, is no. You reclaim that position in your life exactly when it's meant to be. However, that's no disjustice to those that have had the fortunacy in this lifetime to have all of that passed down generationally, but it doesn't make you more or less of a witch than anybody else. But what do you guys think about that? That's my stance anyway.
Right. I fully agree with what you've said. Years gone by, in my tradition anyway, in Welsh folklore, we did not class ourselves as witches. We were the healers, the wise people, etc. Both my nannies, both my mam gees, as we call them, were witches, but they didn't call themselves that. My
Yeah.
mum is witchy, but again, she will not call herself a witch. So theoretically, technically, you could say there is some form of line there. Do I feel that that gives me any power? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. I honestly think there were more people connected to the land, connected to the spirits, connected to nature than we will ever know of. And the people that we do know of were probably the ones that specialized in it, that had the time to specialize, to gain their knowledge in herb lore, and to gain their knowledge and to become healers. Because I know that there are, people in my family that have also connected, do I feel then, oh, well, I know everything? Absolutely not. I'm still learning, and I always have learned. And I work in a very different way to how my mam gees worked and how they connected to the land. There are similarities, absolutely. There is a blueprint for me to follow. There are guidelines, but is my practice absolutely the same? No, because it's modernized as well. I've had to change with the times as well. And I think a lot of people feel very strongly. You do hear practitioners saying, oh, well, I'm a 13th born woman, and all the traditions of my father was the seventh son and all this, and what, you're just born with all this magical power within you? Shut up.
No, but that's a really fair thing, because magic traditionally was an extension of religion. It could have been like regional as well, like, because it wasn't called magic. It wasn't called
No.
witchcraft in the sense that we call it today. So it's really fair to say that we have evolved into these modern practitioners. So when we talk about what witchcraft really is, it's a blend of the old ways mixed with the modern. And I think that's really important for new practitioners to understand, that all of those things are correct if they feel right to you too, because we can get so caught up in what is the right thing to do, but actually all of it's correct. Oh, you've got lineage, perfect. You've got all of that education to be passed down. You're a new practitioner, but you want to work with deities. That wasn't necessarily part of like folk tradition either, in the traditional, in the modern sense that it is today. Oh, you want to work as a green witch, like you say, Vicky, that wasn't a traditional term, but it's something you've adopted as a modern practitioner because it represents part of your craft. But you've got lots of traditional things passed down orally as well, which is fabulous. I haven't got that. I've got to try and find it.
I think that's the only bonus of it, some of which I know was passed down, and I'm so grateful for that.
Do you think that could be restrictive to some practitioners who have
Absolutely.
lineage? Because
Yeah.
I guess it's part of being any family dynamic where you've got the expectation then to follow that path. And then you don't necessarily open up to other areas of the craft because that's the way you've been taught.
I have an interesting lineage. I'm not even going to harp on about it because to me, that isn't who I am. It's helpful for some of the knowledge that I have and some of the knowledge that was passed on. That said, I still had to find my own path. Do I think people could really get stuck into I'm this type of practitioner because X amount of generations were? I think they can, but do you know what? The thing with folkcraft, which is what I'll call it for the moment, because if we go way back when, that's what it was. It was just folkcraft, working with the land, making sure you survive, making sure you can heal people who have got a sickness in some way, shape, or form. It's always evolved, and I was lucky enough to have a family and a supportive family who understood that it evolves. Everybody's slightly different. Everybody has slightly different gifts or interests, and that's what makes the world go round. So I was very lucky in that sense. There are members of my family who don't practice, but they've got the same lineage as I have. It's not a power move. It's more, maybe I do things a little bit more considered of the why I do things, just because that was taught to me much earlier.
The other thing about that, I'm just wondering, those people within your family that don't practice openly like you, they're still like local and folkloric, like superstitions, right? That are passed down generationally, and whether they've still taken on the superstitions but don't consider themselves witchy per se.
I
That'd be
think some, if I go through the head list of my family, some do, some poo-poo it completely, but they don't mind other people practicing. That's not a problem. I'm just wondering if they all throw salt over their shoulders. That's what I'm wondering. I don't, I have to ask them.
they don't pick up the knife when they drop it on the floor.
I'll
They
never pick
won't
up a
pass
knife when
somebody
you
on the
drop it on the floor.
stairs.
I know.
Don't pass on the stairs. What do
Yeah.
you mean? Oh no, you're not witchy at all. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the superstitions do tend to stay in families, don't they?
But that's old folklore of
Absolutely.
witchcraft, again in inverted commas. That was where it all stemmed from. It was the folk traditions and superstitions, which have evolved into modern day practices. But then you've got the modern day practices that have turned into more ceremonial magic as well, which I don't align with at all, but it's a valid way of practicing. But that ceremonial practice, especially when you think of the nighties and the craft, was really kind of put out there as part of what witchcraft looks like, feels like, Wicca as well, which we'll come on to potentially in one of the subjects as we go through this. But yeah, modern practice, and again, there's no right or wrong. It's how it feels aligned for you. But there's two differentials. When you're saying what witchcraft is, it's so many things, and as a individual, you need to find out what that practice and what that word means for you too.
Can anybody be a witch? Absolutely. I think should people be witches, there are some people that maybe shouldn't. And that isn't me pulling hierarchy, because I could be one of those people who shouldn't be doing it, in theory.
Oh my God, why? What have you
I
done?
know. Or just no, but you know, it's the it's the respectful and going a bit careful, isn't it? So can anybody learn this stuff? Absolutely. Should maybe everybody be doing it? That's for them, that's their path. You know, maybe learning a few things on social media, short form, wearing a pointy hat and going on
Oh my God,
national
don't. That
TV.
winds me up even thinking about it.
Yeah,
It
maybe that's
popped up
not a
on my
great
social
thing.
media last night and I'd seen it weeks ago. And I know there's been some conversation groups about it. And I didn't want to post anything because it would just bring hate on that lady. But it's just so degrading. Like, at least explain what a pointy hat means and why that's
Mm.
a reference to witchcraft, or just explain why you're holding a broom and why we call it a besom and what that means. And by the way, we will talk about that as we go through witchcraft and terminology, because I know some of you won't be familiar with that, but explain it,
Yeah,
because it takes the fear and the mockery out of it, because there is a huge laughing community that find it all funny. I hear it every single day. And I take a lot of it with tongue in cheek, but also I do get quite passionate about the fact that I do this so openly and on social media to empower people, not to do the same, but to find what works for them. So yeah, educate yourself on all of those things. Okay, so shall we go through the key terms then that you will hear quite often in witchcraft? So this one, I don't know why, but there's an emotion that stirs in me. So I'm gonna let one of you answer first about it, but I know why it stirs an emotion in me, but it just does. So magic, and then we see the word magic with a K. What do you guys, well, maybe you shouldn't say how you feel about it, and I'll explain why I feel a certain way in a bit, but what's your understanding of that term? Do you use magic with a K?
No.
no.
No, no, no. And we're all going no because most of us understand that that came from a practitioner in the 1900s who did actually really popularize witchcraft, to be fair, but it was a very ceremonial form of witchcraft, and he came with a lot a lot of baggage and a lot of negativity, and I won't profess to understand Aleister Crowley in great detail. Um, he was an occultist. Was he did he call himself a magician? Have I made that up? Maybe it's one to dive deeper on if you guys want to understand. But whenever I see the word magic with a K, it's not something I would ever use. It's a modern version of magic that was created by Aleister Crowley. But I don't know what you guys think about it. Or whether you've got more information actually about that.
I think you've pretty much hit what I know on the head. I'm not a deep diver on the Crowley. For me personally, I don't use the K. I'm not a Crowley lover.
There's like I said, when I see the word magic, it immediately gives me an emotion. So that emotion I always try and understand a bit deeper.
I think I know why he used the K. It was more to do, and I had to look because I couldn't remember the actual quote, but he defined it as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. So mainly to distinguish spiritual or ritual practice from stage magic. And I
Right.
believe that's why the K was added. I might be wrong, but yeah.
But isn't it interesting that stage magic? I wonder where he was going with that. And I guess like social media today, we talk about people doing performance and aesthetics. Perhaps his view of the world was very similar, but maybe we're going down too far of a deep route with Aleister Crowley. We'll move on. But if that's something that interests you, but for information, the K comes from Aleister Crowley, an occultist practitioner in the 1900s who's got a very dodgy past. Okay, so the next one on the list, energy. What does energy mean to each and every one of us?
It is the life force of absolutely everything. There is nothing without some form of energy. We're not separate from energy. We're not separate little bubbles of energy. Our energy, to me personally, goes from one thing to another thing, whether it be a rock, a tree. There is no break in between. We are one and all, from the earth up to the wind that's going to trees. We are all energy.
That's it. But that's interesting you say that. So I want to ask you,
Go
do you
for
think
it.
all of that energy is interlinked then? Or
Yes.
are there different energy sources?
Me personally, I think everything is interlinked. I think some of it has a different vibrant energy. Look, we've had tipples. Yes, that's all I'm going to say.
I know it's only going to get worse from here on. It. So, no, I said it's a question I wanted to ask because there are different viewpoints on this, right? Like there is a one source of energy, and when we die, we all go back to that one source, like our human body goes back. But that's one set of beliefs. Some people believe everything holds energy, but they're separate energetic vibrances, like you say. But do they come back together after the human or whatever form they took? Or, yeah.
Okay, so just to try and clarify what I'm trying to say is currently I'm a human being. We're hoping, okay?
Thank
That is
goodness we've sorted
debatable.
that out.
And to live, I have to use what's around me for sustenance to create energy and use those calories up so I can do the day. I can be really busy and use more energy, and I interact with things all the time. That's all energy movement. However, when I die, my body goes back to the earth and that energy goes back into the earth, and it will become a tree, or it will feed a plant, or that in turn will feed an animal. So that's what I'm saying. Everything in essence is connected. Do I think it's all from one source? I actually don't know.
Well, I'll ask you again in a future episode after
Maybe.
you've done the shadow work on that. Sorry, don't mean to wind you up with shadow work. What do you think, Anon? What's energy to you? Are you human?
I think I am. I don't know. Give me a bit
That.
now. I've only had a few sips of wine. I don't know. Ask me in half hour. At the minute, I'm connecting with the energy of the wine beer, and it's lovely.
Just welcome to our Friday night, guys.
No, no, it's similar to what Vic said. I do believe we are all from one source. Now, will I be still within that viewpoint in 10 years' time? I don't know. And that's the point of my journey. I meander. I gain further knowledge along the way. I'll park some ideas as I'm going. I do think we're all connected. However, I do think there are more vibrational forms of energy. I don't want to use the word powerful or higher forms of energy because that's not necessarily my belief system. But I do believe that there can be energy out there that I will not consent to working with. The majority of the time, that is primarily why I'm doing my protection. And a lot of the energies I do work with, or the spirits, I would class are from the other world or the other realms. And I will view those energies and spirits as, can I say, brighter or with a different vibrational energy to them compared to where I am here in my physical realm, in my physical body. And I do align with this idea of, changing our vibration to attract certain energies in. I do align with that.
See, in essence, Anon, what you were saying is you're human currently, and you may change your view later on, which is pretty much what I was saying.
Yeah, that's what I said. Same as Vic.
Yes.
But that, again, though, you make a really good point because you guys have been practicing for longer than I have. We've lost Anon. She's got the giggle, but you've been practicing a while longer than me. And as we were talking then, because I asked the questions and I don't think about my answer until afterwards, and I'm not really fully formed with the idea that we all lead back to one source either. I've definitely not come to that conclusion, but I've also, like I said in the last episode, started being open to different levels of vibration that I had no clue I would ever be aligned to, like this dragon energy. And that's a really modern practice. It feels ancient to the core, though, and it feels very aligned with Avebury, which I keep going back to, but it's just currently where I'm at. That's where my path's taking me at the moment. All roads lead back to the stones. For me. So yeah, so energy for me is not only just about the energy that I'm holding, it's the energy from the people around me, the energy of my home, the energies that I can tap into. But where does all that energy lead? I guess I haven't quite got there yet. And interestingly, I did a live workshop on my Patreon last night, and one of the questions, and it was irrelevant to the live. I was doing a pendulum workshop for beginners, which was really fun. I was an absolute knob on it as per usual because I thought I had a mouse in here, but actually it was my fizzy drink squeaking. I realised afterwards. Anyway, not to digress. But the question was, so I was explaining about how a pendulum moves from the energy within us and like our intention, which actually that's probably the next point, but the energy that we hold within us is not like spirit coming around and knocking it. And I said, look, and I was trying to explain energy to the group that I was working with. I said about the energy of your house, and somebody put a question. They said, do you really believe that your house has got energy? I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
I said, the spirit of your home. And they're like, the actual spirit. I said, no, I don't believe there's a person walking around. That's not how I view the energy of my home, but it has a name. It can get blocked. It can feel overwhelmed. It can feel joy and happiness. It can feel grief, because all of those things are held by the people that reside within it. That's how I view that energy. Is like, it's like you say, it's within everything. My plants have got energy and they keep fucking dying because I'm not giving them the positive and they're absorbing all the negative. Energy belongs to everything. Stop laughing, Anon, about my dead plants.
And it can be absorbed as well, isn't it? And that's the point. It can be absorbed by our buildings. It can be absorbed by our land. We can absorb it. This is why it's so important that when we exit a room where it's been difficult, or we can feel that negative energy in there, it's so important to energetically shift it and cleanse ourselves when we leave.
Okay, so if I'm going to take this out of the mystical, and I was talking to my husband about it, who doesn't do anything witchcrafty at all. If I said to him, or I'll say to you guys, you have been out for the day, okay? You don't know what's gone on in your house with regards to your family. You don't know who's had a fun time, or an argument. You come home, you open the door, and without seeing them, you know what the energy in your house is. You know when someone's upstairs
Yeah,
sulking because they've
100%.
just lost an argument, but you haven't seen those people. It's that weird funk in the air.
Weird what? In the air?
Funk.
Oh, okay.
Don't ask me to spell it. FNK. No, FNU. Edit that out.
We're keeping that. We're keeping that.
Keeping that in.
Oh. So intention, we hear about this all the time, but what people don't do very well, I see, particularly, is put detail around it or explain it. So when we go, we need intention, or you should have intention when you're doing a spell. And intention is such a broad term, but actually I think intention is kind of linked to energy as well, because the force that we're putting into something and the way that we're thinking about what we want to achieve is the way that I view intention. But it's so flippantly thrown around, again, social media, where most of us are trying to learn or hone our craft or bring in different parts of our understanding. They go, well, intention. And especially when they say intention is everything, it absolutely is not. But I will let you two speak on that a little bit more. But intention for me is just about setting our view on what we want to achieve. Because if we're not clear from the outset what we're trying to do with anything, when we're divinating, when we're doing spell work, when we're getting up in the morning, the intention is, what do we want to achieve? When I get up in the morning, do I want to have a shit day or do I want to have a good day? My intention is I want to have a good day, so I want to lean into that intention. When I'm sat down doing spell work, it's not just about going, give me the money, make sure you protect me. The intention is about how I feel about the outcome as well. Like, what do I want to feel into energetically, which is why I say they're intertwined. When I'm making that intention, how is that going to feel in my body? What is the expectation when I'm setting that intention? I don't know if I've articulated that well, but I think those two things are interlinked. When we're setting our intention to something, it's more interwoven as to what we want the outcome to be, rather than just going, oh yeah, I want loads of money, oh yeah, I want to protect myself, oh yeah, I want to have a good day. We can all say those things, but without leaning into the energy of what we want that to feel like at the end of the day, when we've cast that spell, when we've drawn in the things that we're working towards, then it's not going to work. So intention for me is not just a word, it's about the feeling behind what we're doing and what expectation we've got around that.
It's an interesting word, isn't it? Because it does get thrown around so flippantly, and it gets thrown around, intention is everything. Well, actually, yeah, it's kind of important, but it's not everything. Because if you're not breaking it down to what it actually is, you've got a very broad spectrum word there, haven't you? So to me, intention, that's my what, my why, and my emotion about that, and what and why I want that to happen, and how I want that to happen. But I'm going to use my energy through emotion to make that work in in spellcraft as such. Does that? I was trying to give
No,
you
it does. It's a
short
difficult
answer.
one to explain, but and like I said, I think it links to energy, because intention isn't just about going, this is what I want, blah blah blah. It's about really feeling into what that means. What does it mean for you, Anon? Do you use intention or the word intention within your craft?
I don't necessarily use the word intention, but the ethos behind it is integral to my spell working, I would say. So I like viewing in my mind a triangle shape, which is a very sacred symbol for me. The first process of that is the thought. Oh, something's come into my head. Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? Etc. And then, as Vic was saying, breaking it down, the whys. Like I've said before, sleeping before doing a working, writing things down, reflecting on it. So the first process is usually the thought aspect for me. Intention is more about the energy aspect of it, and it's all interwoven with every aspect. So it's the intention is, am I working with deities with this? What kind of energy am I placing into this? Bringing my energy up to match, so to speak, the energy that I want to attract back in. So intention is used a lot, but it's absolutely not everything. But I would say it is a vital part of my spell work. And then the last aspect is the action. Like you were saying, I want money to come to me. The action part of it is looking at how I can save, where I can save. Have I been buying lunch every day while I've been in work? Have I been buying that coffee every day? Can I shop in a more in a better way then, that in shops where certain items are cheaper? Can I start cooking things that are bulk made and already prepped? So I'm taking, so it's that's the action. It's placing it in. It's like someone saying, I want a new lover coming in, but actually sitting on their ass on the sofa
Yeah.
and just expecting this beautiful other human being to just knock on their door. Sounds lovely, but
No.
you've got to do it. You've got to
Do
get
you know
out
what?
there.
I'm sorry for jumping in, but I just reminded me of a comment I had on a post on YouTube yesterday. Basically, I said that we shouldn't be doing spell work for everything. Like you say, and then that's
Yeah,
why I
agree.
jumped in, Anon, because you were talking about what is the intention and why are you doing it. So the comment was that I was a scammer because I was saying that it's also the action you take, not just
No,
the spell that you
all
cast. Oh no, I'm a scammer, Anon, by
yeah,
the way.
no, all
Oh,
you.
what?
I would argue in my practice, it is not craft, it is not spell work, it is not magic without some form of action there.
Absolutely. I can have the absolute intention to bake a cake, but without mixing the cake ingredients together and putting it in the oven, I'm not getting a cake.
What are you going to get, man? No.
Probably fresh air at this
No,
moment.
but it's true. And
Yeah,
just to say that we intend for something to be is just, yeah, it's wild. And we see this an awful lot. It's just like, okay, we can throw all of the items and correspondences and layer up, which we're going to talk about again in a second, our magic. And we go, oh, right, our money bowl's done. Our money bowl's done, and I intend it to work. But actually, intention runs far deeper than that. It's not just about
Yeah.
the intention of what you want it to do. It's about, like what Anon just said, there's what, and you, Vicky, actually, the why, the how. How is that going to make me feel when it's achieved? Because breaking down those elements then get you back to what the intention actually is.
because if you're putting in attention, my car's broken down and I need money. And this is going to sound quite new agey. It's just new agey stuff has clicked onto this. It's quite an old thing, isn't it? But what I'm actually doing is I'm actually focused on the fact that I have lack of money because I can't get my car fixed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm going to subconsciously say, well, I've got lack of money, I can't get my car fixed, but I really want this money. And now I'm not going to take any action whatsoever other than just expect a check to come through my door. It doesn't work like that.
Well, on YouTube, apparently I'm a scammer.
Well,
So,
good
yeah.
for you.
But yes, so basically the intention is the driver, but it is multi-layered and multifaceted. We can't
Yes.
just
Yeah.
tend to have something, but actually it's far more deeper than that. I think is our summary of intention. So correspondences then, guys. We can start with a caveat, right? We don't need correspondences for magic to work. The magic is within us. And I didn't mean that to sound sarcastic because I genuinely and wholeheartedly know that to be fact. That is what I teach. That is the core of my belief.
Yeah.
I just realized it sounded a certain way as I said it. But I also really love correspondences. So I'll go last because I'll talk about it all day otherwise. But what do you guys feel about correspondences? Anon, how do you use that in your practice? And what does correspondences mean to you?
I think it comes back to what you were mentioning earlier about layers. Correspondences can mean a wealth of things. You get correspondences with colours, you get correspondences with herbs, with flowers. So as an example, if you wanted to add extra energy or extra oomph, as I like to call it, to your working, you are going to add layers, and those layers can be represented by herbs, plants, colours, pebbles, shells, sand, earth, etc. When it comes,
Moon. You forgot the
oh,
moon.
The moon.
oh,
Celestial
that
event.
celestial bitch up there, she's stunning. Yeah, the moon, the weather, the spirits of the land, and absolutely yourself. There are many, many, many workings that I do within the land. Like I've said before, nature is my altar. And myself, my body is my altar as well, right? But I do love using correspondences from time to time. I think it's incredibly important. It's understanding that every plant, every herb, and every colour will have a wealth of different correspondences to it. So it's understanding that the spirit of the plant or the herb, as an example, right, may have a poisonous aspect to it or a negative aspect to it. It might have a neutral aspect and then also a very positive aspect to it. When we are speaking to that specific herb, number one, we are putting our intention that we mentioned, our breath and our energy onto it. And we are asking that specific spirit of the plant to work with us to bring us A, B, or C in what we want, whether it be love, whether it be cleansing, protection, spiritual protection, etc. And when we look at colours, I'm not a pink girl. I'm not a pinky girl. But if you look at the colour correspondence, pink would be classed as that self-love, like we get with rose quartz, the typical crystal, right? For me, one of my favourite colours is purple. And if I was going to do a self-love with regards to candle magic with the colour, I might personally want to use my personal experience of using purple. So it's important to understand the correspondences, but it's also about understanding your own personal connection to certain plants. There are some people that hate lavender, that can't smell it because it gives them a reaction or a headache. So for calming spells, they can't use it. There are some people that don't like roses, but for a love spell, as an example, most workings will say to use a rose. I would argue use a flower that you want a loved one to give you. That is one of your favourite flowers, and you can still use that as a really positive correspondence in your working.
I love that you reference that because it's really important because correspondences are there's traditional correspondences, folkloric correspondences, but actually the core of anything that we use in our correspondence magic especially is based on how we feel about that correspondence. And like you said, purple for you aligns more fully for self-love than a pink does. And what about you, Vic? How do you use correspondence? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm pretty loosey-goosey with correspondences. Easy peasy. So correspondences for me are like a palette of paints. I want to paint a picture. I'm going to put certain colors on that. I'm going to mix them up a bit. And then hopefully we paint a picture, right? So my correspondences, in essence, are the different paints that I'd put on a palette. They may change according to my feeling, how I feel about them, the way I want to layer them up, or you could say ingredients of a cake. I've got cakes and paintings on the mind today. They're just symbolic tools, and we all have different feelings and the ways of working with them. And yes, there's some, rosemary's great for memory. Okay, actually, so's mint. So work with what you want to work with. You don't need all the gizmos and gadgets. It's about your practice being your practice. That sounds really bad, but you've got to layer it up the way that you would layer up a cake or a loaf of bread, the recipe, the ingredients, the way that you would layer up a painting. So they're just tools. They're just tools. And this prescribed color magic thing, yes, obviously, I mean, I work with colors a hell of a lot, but some of the correspondences that are written down in modern terms, I don't actually agree with. Because for me personally, it doesn't work that way. Same as Anon was saying about pink. So yellow, for instance, to me, it's not a bright and breezy color. It's actually something that is going to go down the lines of more depressive.
So, but that is really interesting because we do all have our individual references, and that can be from like generational things as well, like our grandmum or what did you call it? Mamgi. Mamgi, I love that. Our mamgi gives us, and therefore we always associate like friendship or love or whatever it may be to that. So I uh, sometimes I'm lazy with it and I go, actually, no, I'm not going to use any correspondences. But if I'm doing specific spell work, which I don't do that often these days, to be honest, like everybody thinks we're running around bloody doing spells. I don't do spells a lot. I'm going to do one this Sunday and I'm doing one next Thursday actually with my Patreon, an abundance ritual. And the reason I'm doing it on Thursday is because it's Jupiter's day. It's the day of expansion. It's my favorite day of the week. But it also aligns to a waxing moon, which is a super important correspondence for me. And I will use traditionally known correspondent herbs like cinnamon, bay leaf, basil, those things that are meant to bring in abundance. So those things are really important to me. And I think it all boils down to, again, our individual practices and what we feel aligned to. So if abundance for you means something different, then work with that. Don't question it,
Yeah.
because our body and the way that we feel about it reacts much quicker than our mind does. So we need to feel into that. If we feel like lavender, as an example, feels abundant to us because I don't know, we have an idea of going to this manor house when we were a child and there was lavender everywhere and it just felt luxurious and abundant because it is one of those plants that grows out of control, although mine's just about to die, but we won't go into that. But anyway, if you've got that correspondence in your head, that's absolutely relevant. That's how you should use that herb, that plant, that correspondence, that color. Vicky, like you said, yellow feels like depressive. It doesn't for me. I don't use it within my magical practice that way. Yellow represents the sun and Sundays and abundance, or creativity even, and joy and all of those things. So it is just about finding what works for you. You can use multiple correspondences in magic. Ultimately, you don't need to. Going back to the way I sarcastically put it across at the beginning, but didn't mean to, the magic is within us. So we can perform magic without any correspondence at all. But when we feel that we want to layer it in, we absolutely can, and we should focus on what that means for us individually.
Can I just quickly add in as well correspondences whilst I say I'm gonna okay, I won't then. That's it, I'll just stop talking. No, so I'll say it's like putting colors on a palette. That makes it sound like you need to use lots and lots of them, and when we talk about layering up, it makes it sound like you need to use lots of them. Actually, the thing that I found is if you add too many ingredients, it can spoil what you're doing somewhat. Keep it simple, guys. Just, keep it simple. If you just have one thing, do the one thing. That's absolutely fine.
Okay, so let's go on to some other things that we will often hear. Shadow work. So I get asked quite a lot about shadow work from people on Patreon and social media all of the time because it is very much a popularized area of deep diving our emotions that seems to have been attributed to witchcraft. And just talking from a historical perspective, it's never been part of a traditional witchcraft practice. It was created by a guy called Carl Jung, again in the 1900s, as a psychological tool to understand like the shadow, I think the persona, ourself. Which is amazing. It's an amazing psychological tool to break down. And I often use the terminology on social media because people understand it and can relate to it. However, shadow work typically is not a witchcraft thing, but elements of our shadow self, and I think going back to your earlier comment, Vicky, about understanding ourselves truly and fully as part of what witchcraft is, I 100% agree. Like that is uncovering parts of ourself that we need to work on, understand. But I call them shadow because I haven't got a different terminology to use. But shadow work is about Carl Jung, who I believe was like a psychologist, which is why he kind of coined that phrase, which has now been attributed to witchcraft, which is, you know, again, something that isn't a modern, isn't a historic thing.
Yeah, and you'll hear me, I will use the terminology of it, because if I'm talking to other witches or I'm talking to people who are beginning their journey, they understand not necessarily the term of what shadow work is, but they've heard the terminology. They know it's more of the sort of the darker side, if you like. Do I think you need to do shadow work? Absolutely bloody not. And there you go. I mean, do I think you ought to be honest with yourself? And sometimes that's a bit of a journey. Yes, because you find out more of your why.
Do you have to journal then, Vic?
I don't journal that often.
No, I hate it. But that's also a big part of modern shadow work practices is to journal it out. And I know I absolutely, I'm not saying it's not a good thing. I think I teach it, I advocate for it. I'm not good at it. Unless I'm within a space or a specific kind of workshop or an environment where I'm going to journal specifically. But I won't get up in the morning and journal. But that again, journaling is part of shadow work, comes hand in hand. It's more of a modern practice.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I have a notebook and I have a grimoire. I am more likely to take notice of what a plant is doing, or how did that spell go?
Oh my God, I'd love to get hold of your grimoire. I feel like I
I'm
want to
saying
see it.
nothing.
Is
I'm
it like
saying
is it like a
nothing.
big ancient looking, is it on a pedestal?
It's kind of heavy.
You got an ancient grimoire, Vic.
An ancient grimoire. I do like a grimoire, but then I'm all arty-farty, aren't I? So yeah, I do like a grimoire.
Is it one of those big fancy massive ones?
It's pretty, let me put it that
Oh
way.
man,
I know. Do you want me to
I've
leave it
always
to you when I
wanted.
die?
I've always want. Yes, please.
Okay, we're
I've
done.
always wanted to do a grimoire, but again, and for those that don't know, it's a book where you keep all of the spells and knowledge, and you pass it down generationally.
Yeah,
I don't know how.
and you put in things like, what works for you.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, this is the sore throat recipe, and actually, I know that it's going to go have honey and stuff, but I tried chamomile in that, and that worked really, really well. That was a great success. So
I
let's actually write that
definitely
one
want
down.
you to hand down your grimoire to me, please. I started one and then I couldn't make it look nice enough, and then I judged myself and I stopped. So, but I also don't have anybody to pass it down to. My son, well, maybe he will find his way, but he's very religious, so we'll see. Imagine going, here you go. I left it to you in my will. It'll just go to waste. But
It's actually part of why it's part of why I started the Patreon, which is why it's free, because there are some grimoire pages of mine and info of mine that are actually out, and they will be going out. And it's because people are so worried about, I've got to have this really lovely looking book. For me, that's an easy thing. I'm not tooting my own horn. That is just what I do.
I know. I bet it's
So
amazing looking. Please send me a
it's
picture
kind
on
of cool.
WhatsApp.
I'm not showing anybody my grimoire. Um, but what I can do is I can adapt it a little bit and say, look, you can print this off if you want to, put it on your own paper, let's build it all together. And if you don't agree with some of the things that I've put in there, actually, there's some borders and stuff that you can use, because you don't necessarily want my stuff in your grimoire.
I do.
Anyway,
I want to be in the famous Vicky Grimoire.
that's it.
Wheelie Green Witch, the page of Gale.
It is
Gale
all
had
yeah,
services.
mine is all hand
Services.
bound as well. It's all hand bound.
Oh my God, it sounds
The
like a
paper has been
dream.
made. Yeah. I'm a bit picky about it. But again, I'm really old. I've been doing this a long time. So there we go.
Wow, I didn't want to say that. And on over to the other oldie.
Hi.
How about you? Shadow work, grimoires. What's your thoughts?
For me, I actually call it reflection work. I don't call it shadow work because when I first heard the term and I thought about viewing my own shadow, I was like, how is that negative viewing my own shadow that I cast in that beautiful sunlight or moonlight?
Yeah.
My own physical shadow is a beautiful reflective image of me. I think reflection work is incredibly important, but it is not to be done and I mean this with love, right? It is not to be done if there is any form of trauma there. I would not advise it to be done on your own, really digging down deep into Pandora's box. And
Absolutely, absolutely agree.
and if there is anything like that potentially there in your past, please seek professional support soon. I really wouldn't advise that to be done on your own. With regards to journaling, I have, now see, I don't call them grimoires. I have lots of books which are primarily a record of my spells, the dates, the time, the moon phase, Gail, you'll be glad to hear.
Thank you.
Correspondences, if I use them, wise, and I've got books and books of those because that is my reference. I can look back, and if a spell hasn't come through exactly as I was planning it on, I look back and reflect on that. With regards to my own reflection, I've mentioned this before. When I go into nature, I find nature incredibly cleansing anyway. And if I am in a private, space in the woodland with my dog, I will speak to nature. And I find that incredibly cathartic. It's, especially if I've had a difficult day, a difficult week, if there's lots of different choices to be made and I'm not sure what pathway to go on, or, do I think something is holding me back and why and when and all of that, I'll do that in nature, or I will do that in my car driving from A to B. I don't need to write that down because for me anyway, as soon as I write down my concerns about things, I give it power. If that then becomes a physical reality. At one point, it's a thought in my mind, but as soon as I write something down about a reflection of self of, oh, I should have said this, I could have done that differently, I give it power. And I refuse to give that power. I'll verbalize it and then I will let it go.
Do you know, that's exactly how I feel about it. Exactly how I feel about it. Absolutely. Keep notes of what works, what doesn't work, so that you've got some sort of reference record. But I am not in for this shadow work journaling thing. Not at
No.
all. It's a bit like, when you've got a cut and it ends up all horrible and pussy and green and grim. Yeah, am I going to write about it and try and use some sort of magic it away, or shall I go to a GP and go and get some antibiotics?
Yeah. I mean,
You know?
it's a very good way to look, and I do advocate this under safe circumstances to view your progress of mentally and physically where you once were compared to where you are now. And I think for some people that can be incredibly important to view their journey of recovery or, feeling better about themselves or a situation. But that's not for everybody. Viewing back a specific moment or person in your life that made you feel horrific is only going to reintroduce that trauma again. So for me personally, in my practice, I don't work like that.
So as we anticipated, we were never going to finish this in just one episode. So the basics of witchcraft and the terminology will definitely have a part 2. So make sure you come back for that. So that leads us on to our Come Sit With Us listener question. And this week it comes from Lulu Lava, who is on TikTok. She has been loving the podcast. She's been listening to the questions, but she's always wondered, and we've never seen a question from anyone asking about this online. And interestingly, we've just covered some of this, but the question is about shadow work. Everywhere you hear how important shadow work is, I've tried books and guides, I just don't get it. I'm not sure if it's because luckily I've never really had past trauma and that I've never had to deal with it, or it still festers. Can you shed any light on this, please? And I think we've just answered some of that in truth, but answering this question specifically, what do you think, Vic?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think we have actually already covered it, really. But I think if shadow work isn't your bag and you're not connecting with it, you don't need to do it.
And it's a fair question to ask in terms of whether I've had past trauma. But when we look at the way Anon phrased it, our reflection and things that we need to reflect on, Is there past lives that we need to look at that are holding us back? It's not necessarily about traumatic events in this lifetime, but it can be, again, not even trauma, but it can be just things that are holding us back, generally speaking. Because we've all got wounds within us from our childhood where we've got abandonment issues, perhaps. And I'm not saying from a traumatic position, just from being a child and feeling like we weren't supported, or somebody saying something shitty to us like you're never going to amount to anything, or you're fat, or you're ugly. Those things can then come to us in this adult version of our existence and hold us back. So shadow work, as we've explained, isn't necessary, but sometimes it's important to unearth the things that may be holding you back from moving on. And that's the difference, I think. So
which we covered a little bit earlier on, by stripping yourself back, understanding who you are, why you do things. It's really important.
But shadow work isn't necessary
But
unless
shadow
you
work's
want
not
to go down the
necessary.
Carl Jung
No.
psychological route. What do you think, Anon?
I think within my craft anyway, knowing self, understanding self is incredibly important. We mentioned doing money magic earlier. I think if you've grown up in an environment where money was something that everybody else had, money was something that was only for the wealthy, and you grew up in an environment where it was always lacking, and you're doing spell work connected to it, and you're thinking, actually, I'm not seeing much of a benefit to the working. I think that's potentially where a lot of reflection work can come into it, is understanding your emotional relationship with money, just as an example of, do you feel that you do not deserve it? Are you still subconsciously in that mindset of money will never be mine? So therefore, when you're doing the work in, there's a part of you that subconsciously still thinks, oh, well, this will never happen. So therefore, you're not aligning with that frequency, because deep down, you still have a negative belief to it. So very similar to what you've both said, I think it is important to understand self, understand where you're coming from and your lineage, but it's not necessary. And it's not always safe.
Thank you for listening to Between Three Witches, Witchcraft in Plain Sight. If this episode resonated, you're welcome to sit with it, share it, or let it unfold in your own time. You can find me, Vicky, and Anon on all the social media platforms, and I will write that in the show notes. Until next time, may your practice meet you exactly where you are.